We walked on the balcony, and he was talking to people in the courtyard. He stood here and I stood there. Only as I moved away so we could have a clear shot, the shot rang out. Only as I moved away so we could have a clear shot, the shot rang out.
Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lambermont Weber, and today, once again, we have the extraordinary privilege coming to us from Spain, I believe, is author and world-class researcher. I must say, the winner of the 2016 Prague Peace Prize, and also now invited to present at the November 2016 JFK Assassination Conference in, I believe it'll be held in Dallas, maybe even in Dealey Plaza itself. And we've done programs with Ole on Dealey Plaza, deconstructing the JFK assassination. Welcome, Ole Dammegard.
Thank you so much, Alfred. It's a real honor to be back.
You know, it is such a privilege to be with you. I know that our life paths have converged, and it's like coming across someone who is really has mastered these areas, because if I go back to my life experience, I was there in New York in my loft down on Green Street, starting the citizens campaign to investigate political assassinations. This is after the JFK assassination, the RFK, the Martin Luther King, the Malcolm X. Then we linked up with the Assassination Information Bureau with Carl Oglesby and, you know, that whole gang. And then Representative Henry B. Gonzalez, and together with Dr. Martin Luther King's widow and the Black Congressional Caucus, we got the 1977, 78, 79 House Select Committee on Assassination started, which as soon as it started, perhaps we'll do a program on that one day, it was instantly infiltrated by the CIA. And that was formally to investigate the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X. Now, you and I have deconstructed the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Malcolm X, and we've shown that House Select Committee results were compromised, obviously, by CIA infiltration. And so today, and in our forthcoming program, we'll be doing the two remaining political assassinations, that of Robert F. Kennedy. This is events that shook the summer of 1968. Robert F. Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Today we'll be doing the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And from what you've told me, you have a shocking program that Dr. King actually died and was assassinated at a different place, not on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, by different people, and that people that are involved in this COINTELPRO operation, to use a modern term, this false flag, go up, are just shocking in terms of people who are in the limelight today. So without further ado, I want to introduce author and researcher Ole Dammegard. Over to you, Ole.
Thank you so much, Alfred. And for me, it's an absolute honor to be here with you, since you did so much of the hard work in the 70s and so on, building up to the possibility of this information even being available for someone like myself. So we owe a lot to people like yourself and Henry Gonzalez and so on. The thing with these assassinations in the 60s, I think the importance of them is that, in my humble opinion, the JFK assassination was a coup d'etat in the USA, but not only of America, but also more or less the Western world, because the implications of that assassination and the power overtake that day is what we're facing to this very day. We're struggling with this to this very day. So these are not, I would say, just historical events that needs to be exposed, but they affect our daily life to this very day. And I want to take you back, and also just a little extra remark. If you noticed, all four of these deaths we're talking about now, JFK, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy, happened under the presidency of Lyndon Baines Johnson and the people behind him. I would say not a coincidence. And also when we look into, like we've done programs about Operation 40, which was an ultra-secret hit team that was used very much involved in the JFK assassination and in many, many, many other assassinations where these ones are also indirectly involved or connected. And the paymaster for this group, the person who funneled the funds into this group, was no one less than George Herbert Walker Bush. So we have people also like Porter Goss, who was some years ago was the director of the CIA. He was also part of this hit team, Operation 40 and so on. So many of the people who were involved in these very brutal murders of fantastic people, I would say, have had incredible careers with their hands dipped in blood. And I think we're going to see more examples today, unfortunately. Anyway, so if I can take you back to the 60s, this was a time where a lot of things were going on at the same time, where there was an extreme optimism created and really in the flow when JFK was taken out in November 1963. That was like a shock and a blow to this whole optimism and the feeling that people, the normal person in the street, could make a difference. Then at the same time, so many things happened. There was the racial war almost with black and white, especially in the States, where this tension was incredible. It almost came to like a civil war situation. There was all of these things with protest against the Vietnam War. There was the flower power, the hippie revolution, the love revolution, all the psychedelic drugs, all of these things happening at the same time within very, very few years. And I think the reason why the people we're looking at today, the reason why they were targeted and terminated was that they were very, very central in these historical events. And this man we're going to talk about tonight, Martin Luther King Jr., was one of the most important ones, I think. He is one of the people I truly, truly respect, just like Mahatma Gandhi, for his incredible courage and his philosophy of nonviolence, which I totally support. But he was, when people look at him and they see I have a dream speech and these things where one day we will all be together and so on, that's just one part of it, because he was in the beginning of the 60s, he was working for integration where black and white would be equal and, where there would be same justice for everyone and everything. I mean, the thing that a normal, balanced person would think was natural, but these are the things that people of other skin colors have had to fight for many, many years. But not only was it, first it started with that, and then the civil rights movement, which was a big problem for the establishment. But then after JFK died, then Malcolm X, it came to a point where it was like Martin King knew that he was putting his life on the risk every day. He was stabbed once and he had like a cross-shaped scar on his chest. After that, he was stabbed with a letter opener by a woman. And it's said that he was just a few millimeters from dying from that one. Had he sneezed, he would have died and so on. But he also said that every time he was brushing his teeth, that scar showed him that sort of what was waiting for him and what situation he was living in. His family was bombed, they were threatened, there were all kinds of harassment. The FBI was doing everything to shut him down, to discredit him, to destroy him, his reputation, everything, and still he stood up, which, I mean, it is incredible when you think of it. You can only applaud such a human being. But in 1967, and I think it was in connection with him starting to work together with a fantastic man also called William Pepper, who is, he has been, in later years, he's been the lawyer for James Earl Ray, the person who is sentenced and accused and sentenced for this assassination. In my opinion, totally innocent. He was also, he's also been the lawyer for Sirhan Sirhan, which is another person who is indirectly, innocently sentenced for the assassination of Robert Kennedy. Anyway, and a lot of the things we're going to talk about tonight is only thanks to William Pepper's incredible work that he's pulled off during, I think it's 39 years now, or 40 years. It's incredible, the stamina of this person, who's also been under incredible stress and threats and whatever, but is still standing. But in 1967, when William Pepper and King joined up, Martin Luther King contacted him after an article he wrote about the Vietnam War, where he had been with very, very shocking photos and statements and so on. And this and many other things around the war affected Dr. King in a very, very deep way. And after that, it was actually on the exact day, the 4th of April, 1967, 1 year to the day to his assassination, where he held a very, very famous speech, anti-Vietnam War speech, in the White River Church, I think, in New York. And in that speech, he was very, very brutally honest against the USA and its involvement in this war, which was totally unjust and based on drugs and opium and all of these things. After that, he became like an enemy number one to the state, to the establishment. But not only that, after that, he even expanded more, and he was starting to focus on the redistribution of wealth in the USA, that to take, that the gap between the dead poor and the super wealthy should be redistributed. And I mean, that was just like, it shook the establishment, and this guy needs to be stopped. At the same time, also over these years, I think it was since '59, the FBI had really done everything they could to put him under extreme surveillance, with wiretapping, with extortion, everything to stop him. And J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, hated him. He hated him like nothing else. So also with this thing, when they were talking about the redistribution of wealth, he was talking about the Poor People's March to, or Poor People's Campaign, that involved also a march to Washington, D.C., where they were planning on 30,000 or more people walking to Washington, D.C., and just make a camp outside the White House and say, we're not moving until you start making changes here. And that was just like another blow. Also, this this Poor People's Campaign involved not only the black population, Afro-American population, but also the poor white people, Latinos, the Native Americans, and so on. So suddenly he was widening this whole, I wouldn't call it attack since he was into nonviolence, but attempt of changing it, what do you call it? The front of this was widening in a massive way and very, very fast. So there was a lot of people very pissed off and very afraid that this man could make changes in a big, big scale. And when you look at all of the things all of the different organizations and so on that were joining up in this attack on the establishment, the center of the center of the center was Dr. Martin Luther King. So from their point of view, the one that should be targeted was King. If he went down, it would create like a black hole that could sort of deflate the whole thing. That with hitting one person, they would be able to stop this whole thing. This was also a year of massive riots. There was about 100 cities in the US where there were big fires and riots, and I mean, big changes in the air. So it seems like in 1967, the year before his assassination, that plans started to take shape into how to get rid of him. People involved, some of the people were the same people as in the JFK assassination. I would say, I heard an interview with one of the people involved in a similar scandal in Sweden, who had involved, it was an arms smuggling on a massive scale. And it was the same people that had been used before. And so the reporter asked him, but why did you use the same people? And he laughed and he said, why change a winning team? And so here we have the same kind of philosophy, you know. These guys pulled off the JFK assassination like a masterpiece when you look at these type of things. We're still confused after all of these years. So they brought in the same people again. And what we're talking about is like an unholy alliance between the CIA, the FBI, the mob, the military-industrial complex, the army, and so on. Also, some of the main corporations that were, you know, very threatened about like the African American population not stop buying from shops with white owners and so on. These were big issues, and also the mob's interest in the Vietnam War that were creating millions and millions in the drug import business that was a big part of this whole unjust war on Vietnam. Anyway, so a very loaded situation. And in sometime in 1967, there was a series of meetings between a man called H.L. Hunt, he was the wealthiest person in the US at that time, an oil baron in Texas, very involved in the JFK assassination, and J. Edgar Hoover, where they were talking about how to get rid of this guy, because they tried everything, the extortion, they tried to blackmail him, they tried to discredit him with like that he would having love affairs with other women than his wife. They sent tapes and all kind of material to his home, where in one of the messages they said more or less that if you don't, we will make all of this public, and the only way out for you is by killing yourself. I mean, that was the thing. But this did not work with Dr. King. He was just so determined that he was doing what he was supposed to do here on Mother Earth. So H.L. Hunt, he was sure that he could destroy King he had a special radio program, but J. Edgar Hoover insisted the only way we can stop this man is by killing him. He needs to die. So in the year before his assassination, things started moving, and I think we only know part of what the plan was, because in these assassination conspiracies, they have multiple options. This is part of the whole thing. Multiple patsies, multiple option 1, 2, 3 different cities where the hit can be carried out, and so on. So I think we only know the one around James Earl Ray, because he was the one that took the fall. But I am more or less convinced that there are several other people that were possible patsies, but we'd never heard of them. But anyway, they made a search for a good patsy, and the decision came that this he was not a very clever guy, a criminal on a very low scale, James Earl Ray. He had some involvement with the CIA in earlier years, but he was in jail for, I think he had robbed a supermarket, and he was sentenced to, I believe, 20 years. But when they found him as the perfect patsy, what happened was that Clyde Tolson, who was the number 2 in the FBI and also J. Edgar Hoover's alleged lover, he was given $25,000 to transport to the head of the Dixie Mafia. I think most people have heard about the New York Mafia, the New Orleans Mafia, and so on. But the Dixie Mafia, at this point, was a very powerful mafia that very few people have heard about, at least up until now. But anyway, the godfather of this Dixie Mafia, his name was Russell Atkins. And Tolson, I don't know if there was any kind of gay involvement, which there very often are around these assassinations for some bizarre reason. I don't know why. But Tolson made at least 2 transatlantic trips together with this godfather, Russell Atkins. He was a friend of the family and so on. And he made multiple trips to Memphis, where he met up with this godfather. And one of the times he brought $25,000 to finance the escape. So through Russell Atkins, this amount of money was transported to the Missouri State Prison where James Earl Ray was. And they sort of opened the door, more or less. I think he came out with a bread truck or something like that. He thought that he escaped, I think. But it was like, this was not a prison where people normally escape from, and here the door was left open. So he left, and during the year up to the assassination, he was being used and prepared. I would say he was given a handler, a man called Raoul. After the escape, he went to Canada. There's some question marks how he got there, but there's a pilot called Jules Rico Kimball, who claims to have been one of the pilots flying some of the shooters out after the JFK assassination, and he also claims that he flew James Earl Ray from Atlanta to Toronto. And at this time, Toronto was a stronghold for the mafia. And this is also where a lot of things around the JFK assassination took place. Anyway, he flew there, and the year coming up to the assassination, this man, mystical character called Raoul, was directing and paying James Earl Ray for running errands, more or less, across border from Mexico to the States, or from Canada to the US, everything from TVs to, I think, weapons as well, and so on, but not serious crimes at all. Anyway, so, but that shows, I would say, that the plans of the assassination was at least a year before the actual hit took place. Anyway, so especially the 3 months after escaping from this Missouri prison, he was very involved with this Raoul person. And Raoul later insisted that this man was a CIA man, or James Earl Ray later insisted that this guy was working for the CIA. And there are some intelligence sources that he is a real person. He was born in Portugal, and that he was assisted and supported by a general called William Yarborough. We're going to come back to him as well. And Raoul I believe served in Angola as a mercenary, among other things. Anyway, so in the upcoming months to this assassination, there was a meeting, I believe it was in upper state New York, where the mob from the godfather from the Chicago mob, Sam Giancana, he came together with Johnny Rosselli. Both of these were very involved in the JFK assassination as well. They went to a secret meeting where they met up with people from the FBI and the CIA. And the CIA offered them $1 million to take out King, but it was totally turned down. Giancana said, absolutely, this is a no-touch for us. So they backed out. And I believe that the person from the CIA, there are some sources saying that this man was E. Howard Hunt, which was very central in the JFK assassination as like he called a bench warmer, but he very much involved in a bit of a distance, not part of the shooting team. He was also one of the people very much involved in the Watergate burglary and other hits. But it seems like E. Howard Hunt was the one holding the bag, funding the team and so on. In about 3 weeks before the killing, J. Edgar Hoover held a series of meetings with, once again, people from the CIA and military intelligence involved in the Phoenix operation in Southeast Asia. Now, if you remember when we were talking about the Operation 40, the creation of this ultra-secret hit team in the early 60s, one of the people, or two of the people involved in it, except for E. Howard Hunt, was Ted Shackley, called the Blonde Ghost, and David Atlee Phillips. David Atlee Phillips was actually the handler of James Files, according to James Files himself. He was the shooter, according to himself, the shooter behind the picket fence, and also the handler of no one less than Lee Harvey Oswald. Controlling him and painting him black as a patsy to prepare to take the fall for the whole thing. David Atlee Phillips, I just want to mention also that he was also the controller later of a man called Michael Vernon Townley, who was involved in the blowing up of Orlando Lettier in Washington, D.C. at Embassy Road, where they blew up his car, killed this Chilean diplomat. And he was also on location in 1986 when the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme was gunned down in the streets of Stockholm. So we're talking very central people in very, very big conspiracies. Anyway, Ted Shackley was the one responsible for Operation Phoenix in Vietnam. Operation Phoenix was like a mass extinction program where they killed, I don't know how many thousand of Viet Congs and other people of Vietnamese breed and so on. So here we have Hoover meeting with persons involved with the Operation Phoenix. I believe that the people he met was David Atlee Phillips and Ted Shackley, at least Ted Shackley. These people were also very involved in what was called Operation Mongoose. It's a different term that was involved in the JFK assassination. And this was like a murder incorporated, like almost like a company of death, you know, a company that could just be, or a team that was for rent. Anyone that had a problem could just rent them or rent their services and get people killed. So let's see. So we're getting up to the assassination itself. And it seems like since Sam Giancana turned down the offer or the contract, it seemed, in my opinion, I believe that the contract instead went to Carlos Marcello, the mob boss in Louisiana. And through Carlos Marcello, it was then diverted down through the ranks to a man called Frank Liberto. And Frank Liberto then started recruiting people on a local basis in Memphis to take care of this assassination. Hang on 2 seconds. Nej. Jaha, du menar det här ljudet? Okej, men kör. Är du färdig nu? Vad kan jag göra?
Okay, we're back now. Go ahead, Ole.
Anyway, so what seems to have come forward, information that seems to have come forward, what it's showing is that I believe that the contract was accepted by the mob in Louisiana through Carlos Marcello, and he gave it to a man called Frank Liberto, who was he was a mob connected. He had a greengrocer company in Memphis, and he then contacted a man, a former police officer, that had a bar called Jim's Grill in Memphis, Tennessee, and said, I will give you $100,000 for your involvement. Now, please help me recruit some shooters. And there are 2 shooters recruited from the Memphis Police Department, which we're going to come back to afterwards. These 2 members of the police department, one of them a lieutenant, his name was Earl Clark, and the other one was a man called Frank Strausser. They, together with Raul at one place, this man, he was there at one of the meetings, but there was also a man called Merrill McCullough, who was an undercover Memphis Police Department officer. Later, or he was also, it turned out later that he was also financed by military intelligence as well as FBI, as well as working for the CIA. So here we have once again how these, when you say the FBI or the CIA or the mob, it very often sounds like it's 3 totally different things. But at that point in time, and now as well, I would say, it's so intertangled. It's like different sides of the same coin. You don't know what is what. And also, this is one of the things that fascinated me so much with the JFK assassination, because I got so confused. Because, for instance, one person in one book was said to work for the FBI, in another book, CIA, in another book, he was a hitman for the CIA, for the mob. And it was only when I started seeing that this is actually how it's done, and that this is normal, it's just nothing unusual about it. So it's a good thing to keep in mind that they work very tightly together. Also, Jauer said that there were 2 men that he didn't know, but he said federal agents. I would strongly suggest one of them could have been E. Howard Hunt at these meetings as well. So, coming up to the assassination, there was a big strike going on because there were some sanitary workers that 2 of them had been killed in an accident, and they were working under absolute horrific circumstances in these garbage trucks and so on. And these 2 people were crushed to death in one of these trucks by mistake. And the white employees was given time off with pay, the black workers not. And that it just blew the lid of the whole thing. And it started a whole demonstration or strike where the black drivers and sanitation workers walked around with signs saying, "I am a man." I mean, because they said, it's not a matter of money, it's not a matter about anything. We need to have respect as human beings, as men, as honorable men, and be treated equally. And so this whole thing started, and at the time for when this all happened, Martin Luther King was extremely busy arranging for the poor people's march to Washington and many other things. And then this suddenly happened in Memphis, where Memphis was not an important place at all. But King said that this is exactly what we're fighting for. This is what they need our help. So he insisted, contrary to what his staff said, on going there. He went there and he helped them. He gave some speeches and so on, supported them. And then just when he was about to leave, somebody slipped him a note saying, please, can you come back? And so he agreed upon coming back. And that then gave him a second time to come back to Memphis, sort of. There are big discussions about who gave that note to him, because indirectly that is what got him back into the place where he was assassinated. You will see that there's a lot of strange movement around the timing itself. In the meantime, James Earl Ray had been directed by this mystical person called Raoul to many different locations where King was at the same time, one of them being Los Angeles. But since the hit on Robert Kennedy was already planned, and I think what most people might have forgotten is that there was only like 60 days between the two hits. They're very, very close in time. And so two of them happening in the same city, similar, and so on, that would have just been too much. So I think it was canceled there. So James Earl Ray, not knowing that he was maybe planned as a patsy in Los Angeles, then was diverted or directed by Raoul to go to Birmingham in Birmingham and to Atlanta and then to Memphis. So, my God, there are so many details around these things.
I know.
Anyway, so also when he arrived the second time, he arrived on the 3rd of April with his team, and normally, or he was about to check in at the Holiday Inn Hotel, but the week prior to that, J. Edgar Hoover made a massive thing, almost like a scandal in national media, saying that here we have King, he says boycott businesses with white owners, and then he goes and stay at this luxury hotel owned by white people. What kind of hypocrite is he? And that made King change to the Lorraine Motel, which was black owned and one of the few for black people at that time. So if you see here, there's a diversion away from the Holiday Inn towards the Lorraine Motel. And this hotel was quite famous, the Lorraine Motel, for everyone, like Aretha Franklin, B.B. King, Harry Belafonte, these type of artists and so on, used to stay at the Lorraine. So it was the choice. So this is what happened. So they changed to the Lorraine Motel. Then the day before he arrived there, he was booked for room 206 on the ground floor. But when you look afterwards and you see how the assassination was carried out, that room gives there's an impossible angle for the shot to be fired at that room that is down and to the left, so that there's no way that you can be hit. So somebody went to the hotel the day before, and somebody out of Martin Luther King's entourage came to the hotel and said, can we please change the room to the second floor balcony? So the room was changed to 306. Perfect open for a sniper hit. Now, who changed that room? Who changed that room? According to, before I say anything more, anyone that is pointing out here is not found guilty in court. I'm pointing things out of evidence that has come forward through over all of these years. And I would very much like that the people that I point at, give them a chance to defend themselves, invite them to your programs where they can tell your story, their story, and so on. But this is what Bill Pepper has come forward with after all of these years, and also other sources, and myself included. Anyway, it seems like that when they found out that Martin Luther King had booked on the ground floor in 206, totally the wrong room for the plan that they had set up, they sent a man by the name of Jesse Jackson. He was contacted through the wife of the Dixie Mafia's godfather, Russell Atkins. It was his wife that called a person she called OC, and that person then contacted Jesse Jackson to go there and change the room to get Martin Luther King up on that. You have to understand at this time in history, there were so many people around Martin Luther King was infiltrators. You know, they were paid informers, his driver, the owner of the Lorraine Motel, several people very, very close to him. That he was surrounded by traitors. He was surrounded by traitors, just like Julius Caesar. So there's nothing spectacular about that these people were targeted as well. And there's one witness that under oath have said that some of the money that was brought from the FBI in paper bags to the godfather in Memphis, the Dixie Mafia, Russell Atkins, his son said that on these paper bags, one of the names was Jesse Jackson. Also, coming up to this event, the Jesse Jackson was sort of like a young, upcoming person in this whole scenario, and he was by no means the one to take over after Martin Luther King. Even in his very last speech, the night before the assassination, King made it very, very clear that his best friend was Ralph Abernathy, which indirectly, we're going to come back to this speech, but I think he was very aware of what could go down, and that he made a strong point by pointing him out, saying, if anything happens to me, just like he said, I've been on the mountaintop, but I fear no one. At this point, I see a long life would be wonderful, but I'm not sure I will see the promised land together with you. He knew that his time might be coming to an end. And anyway, so he was pointing, I think, to his best friend, Dr. Abernathy, and pointing him out as the successor after him, should anything happen. But this, I've been to the mountaintop. It was actually at the Mason Temple, and I thought for a while that is a Freemason temple, which would just be totally bizarre, but it's not. It was a black temple after a man called Mason, a preacher early on. But anyway, so then the last day, King spent the most of his time with Dr. Ralph Abernathy from the SCLC, and also Reverend Andrew Young was there, and there was a lot of things going on. There was some court decisions that had to be sorted out and so on. But during the whole day, he was going to meetings and coming back to the Lorraine Motel. But during this day, normally when King arrived to Memphis or any other cities, there were like police security details surrounding him, mostly of black officers that did it voluntarily and protected him like 24 hours around the clock. But this time, all the the black officers and so on that normally were there to protect him, all of them were told by their superiors and so on, thank you so much, but today we don't need you. So they thought that the security was taken care of by someone else. Also, there were police cars surrounding the block of the Lorraine Motel. I think there were 5 units that was constantly surrounding it. But the day when this happened, they were pulled back 5 blocks. At the same time, the right opposite the Lorraine Motel, you have the motel with the balcony, the famous balcony. There's a swimming pool in front of it and a parking area. Then there's like a wall, a street. And then on the other side of the street, there's a fire station number 2. Then there's a bushy area. And then there are the boarding room where James Earl Ray is said to have fired the shots from the bathroom there, standing in a bathtub and so on. And also very close to the fire station is this Jim's Grill, where Lloyd Jarvis, the person we mentioned before, he was the owner of that. Anyway, so in this fire station, there were also black officers and black people in the fire brigade working, and all of them were told go home, or one of them was even said that there was a death threat coming from absolute nowhere. So all of these people were pulled away, so there were no black people at all in the area. At the same time also, there was, instead of the security was being pulled away, but at the same time, there were intelligence gathering there. Instead, the whole fire station was, according to witnesses there, were filled with people in suits from different agencies, men in black, who knows who they were. And the captain of the fire station, his name was Cathal Whedon, he was approached by 2 US Army officers carrying briefcases who said that we've got cameras and so on, and could we please use your fire station as a lookout for the Lorraine Motel? So the captain, he said, wow, my little fire station for sure, used the roof. So somewhere either in the tower on top of the fire station or on the roof itself, there were at least 2 photographers taking photos and filming when the assassination took place, both the area where we're going to talk about where the shooter was and the Lorraine Motel. This footage is still said to be around, and William Pepper for years tried to get hold of it, but haven't succeeded. But this footage would show the actual shots being fired and who did it and so on. Anyway, the 111th Military Intelligence Group that was based in Fort McPherson at Atlanta had Martin King under surveillance for a long time, including wiretaps. And now these photographers are said to have belonged to the same military intelligence group. So interesting as well is that this group was previously associated with the Phoenix assassination program in Vietnam. Here we have another one, how to use the same people. Alfred, please, if you got any questions or anything, I'm just...
No, I on purpose have not wanted to come in and break your flow, because all of the questions would just be detail that would take us off track, because all that we had heard at this point relates to the cover story. And I had been saving questions, for example, about individuals like Jesse Jackson, for whom there is let's call it possible cause. They have probable cause and they have possible cause. That here we have some possible cause prima facie evidence in terms of the monies that he was in the pay of the cabal that actually planned the assassination, from the FBI director down through the Dixie Mafia. He told his wife, who called the intermediary, who called him, and then there was the monies to him, and he was the go-to person inside the Martin Luther King entourage, was Jesse Jackson Jr. And then he became kind of the spokesperson, or one of the principal spokespersons, who filled the vacuum inside the Black community after the assassination of Martin Luther King, including being a major presidential candidate in the future.
I know. So if, just like you say, maybe it's better I go through.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where my mind goes. So that's why I'm waiting for my questions at the end, because they'll open up to that type of question.
Okay. Anyway, so we have somehow possibly King was tricked back to Memphis a second time. Then we have Hoover in media pushing him to book the Lorraine Motel. Then we have someone in a light-skinned individual in King's entourage that changed the hotel room, getting him up on the first floor, or the second floor, where the balcony was, and so on. So there's a lot of things going on while the whole security is being pulled away. At the same time, where military intelligence are there, and all of the FBI, CIA, whoever these men in black and so on were filling this whole fire station. Who they were, I don't know. But so there's a lot of things going on around this this whole scene. At the same time, during this afternoon, there was a waitress from the Jowers boarding house. Her name was Bobby Balfour, and she was told not to deliver any food to the second floor of this motel during the afternoon, meaning that King would be hungry, because when he was shot, he was just on his way to a barbecue that was arranged by a local reverend called Samuel Billy Kyles. Okay, so I would very much suggest that this no food is there so that he would not have sort of like, no, you go guys, I'm full, I need to rest, I'm not hungry. So this was one way of keeping him hungry so that he would not turn down this barbecue. Anyway, so after the shots are fired, it is said that James Earl Ray ran out of the boarding room, totally panicked, had a bag with a gun, with lots of really weird stuff, like an empty beer can with his prints on, hairpins. He had a radio that he used in prison with a serial number on that could be directly connected to him, meaning that when he escaped from prison, he brought his radio. Yeah, right. I mean, come on. Anyway, but there was the whole thing was there, and it was left right outside the boarding house just after. But it's later been confirmed by Guy Caniper, the owner of Caniper Amusement Company, where it was just outside the entrance of his shop, where this bundle was being dropped. And he said it was dropped about 10 minutes before the killing. Okay, so before the shots were fired, that bundle was already there. Okay, so now we're getting close to when the shots were fired, and here's where it gets ugly. Because there were, it is now more or less public knowledge that there were not only a shooter in the bush area, underneath, on the back of the boarding room, on the boarding house, but there was also sniper teams in Memphis this day. It is said that it was an Alpha 184 unit from Camp Shelby in Mississippi on the direct orders of General William Yarborough. Here we have the same general again. And that this sniper team it was an 8-man sniper team that was instructed that they had two targets. One of them, Dr. King, and the other one, Andrew Young. So there were two targets, and they were instructed to only fire on targets with a tie. They were not allowed to shoot anyone without a tie. So since there was a lot of people moving around in this area, this was the way for these snipers to not make a mistake. You know, all the ones in the King group there were people with ties. They always dressed very immaculate and so on. And the two ones that did not have tie this day was Jesse Jackson and Reverend Samuel Kyles. Anyway, so the sniper team were, if I'm correct, they were located on a water tower on the top of another high building, possibly another fire station, I'm not totally sure. And it's said also by Judge Joe Brown that there was one team inside the fire station in the dormitory that they had that they were shooting from inside the room, just with the window open just a few centimeters and so on. Anyway, so this is also standard in these big operations, that the target needs to be terminated. It doesn't matter. They would never trust only one shooter, one shot. So they have multiple shooters in the area, very often triangular fire, making absolutely sure that the person that they want dead is going to die. There is no way for escape. And here is what I believe is the exact same setup, with sniper teams in at least 2 or 3 different positions, and then the shooter that is said to have fired the lethal shot. We're not talking a lot about the official story, which is that James Earl Ray rented this room. He was apparently the reason why he wanted to kill King was that he was a racist, which he was not, and that he managed to be on exactly the correct spot to be able to shoot one shot that killed Martin Luther King. But it's said that he didn't shoot from his room. He shot from the bathroom. There was a bathroom for everyone in the boarding house. Very tiny little bathroom with a bathtub, and the window couldn't really be opened. So when you look at the whole thing, the only way you can fire in that angle is if you're a left-hand shot, a southpaw. Otherwise, you can't get the rifle in that angle, and also your elbow would be pushed up against the wall, making a very bizarre angle to shoot from. When you look at where his room was, that could have been possibly another way where the shots could have been fired from. Not totally sure about that. But one thing also that is important to know is that at the minute the shots is said to have been fired, there was a big tree outside this window, totally covering the site towards the Lorraine Motel. This tree was cut down in the middle of the night or the very early morning hours. Sorry. Anyway, so we're coming up to the point of the shot itself, and Reverend Samuel Billy Kyles, who was the one that had arranged for this barbecue, he and King and Abernathy spent the last hour of King's life in his room 306, talking, like Billy Kyle says, about reference stuff. You know, they were talking about religious stuff and what churches to preach in and so on. And Billy Kyle has almost made a career afterward of being the one that spent the last hour with this icon, Martin Luther King. When the time had come, it was 6 o'clock, and Martin Luther King went out on the balcony. He had Kyles with him, and there started, as far as I know, there was an argument started where King insisted that Jesse Jackson, that was standing down in the parking lot, should put on a shirt and tie. Because you can't come like that to when we're invited for a barbecue. And Jesse Jackson insisted, absolutely not, absolutely not. So they were almost fighting. And the situation between Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King had cooled a lot in the weeks upcoming to this whole thing. So this is also why he was standing still for at least a minute arguing with Jesse Jackson, so that he was in position there. Then just before the shots rang out, Billy Kyles was standing next to him, and he said, he moved away. He was on his way to get a coat from the room, because somebody down, I think it was the driver of Martin Luther King, said it might be cold tonight. And King said, please, can you get my overcoat? So he started walking towards the room where Abernathy was, he said, putting on cologne and making himself pretty for the girls and so on. And just when he stepped away from King, boom, this shot rang out. It is, he has later said, and I'm going to play the video here, where many, many years later, Reverend Samuel Billy Kyles says that we were standing next to each other. You will hear it in a few seconds here for yourself. We were standing next to each other. I started moving away, and only when I started moving away so he could get a clear shot did the shot ring out. Only when I moved away so he could get a clear shot did the shot ring out. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? This is beyond horrific, I think. This is betrayal on the highest level. How to lead someone to their death. This is absolutely despicable. And this is a man that has been interviewed hundreds of times afterwards about this whole thing, and looking all holy and being a reverend and so on. You can hear him say it himself, only when I moved away so he could get a clear shot did the shot ring out. Anyway. So King was shot, they say 1 minute past 6. And he was hit right in the front of the face, in the jaw area. A massive big hole was knocked out in his face. And the bullet then went straight back and ended up between, close to his left shoulder blade, right under the skin. It was a pristine bullet. I mean, people, before the autopsy, there was one police officer or one medical person who said that he rolled the bullet between his fingers. It was in mid-condition. But the bullet that was later presented as evidence and could never be connected with the rifle that was left in the street, this game master, Remington game master, pointing towards James Earl Ray, were in 3 pieces, totally destroyed. And they said we could never make a match that proved that it came from this gun. Actually, now when we're talking about the gun, according to Judge Joe Brown, who was later a judge in this case later on, I'm not sure how he knows this, but he says that the real gun was an XM21, a 7.62 NATO caliber with special stainless steel barrel, a Redfield 3x9 telescope sight modified by the company Leatherwood, using a special subsonic ammunition with a suppressor to reduce the velocity of the bullet to below supersonic, this to confuse the sound signal. I'm not sure how he knows that, but this XM21, that was at that point the Army's sniper rifle, special rifle, and 6.62, that's a European caliber measure. It would be, it's less than a 38, I think, in Euro terms. Anyway, but so when the shot hit King, he fell backwards. There was people there was especially one person in the fire station who was keeping the whole thing under surveillance, who saw that he was lifted up, thrown backwards, and then dropped down on his back. And there was a lot of blood from this horrific wound. And since he was more or less alone, except for Samuel Billy Kyles, who was walking, according to himself, walking back towards the room. The first people that came there was not Kyles, which I think should have been the one if this had happened the natural way, but instead it was a man called Merrill McCullough. He's the one you can see in this very famous photo where everybody's pointing towards the rooming house, the boarding house, pointing, and that was where the bullets came from. This is a photo that has been spread in millions and millions of newspapers and so on. Every year, it's the same photo. But the guy who's kneeling next to King, checking him for a pulse and any life signs, his name was Merrill McCullough. And he was a Memphis undercover cop who had infiltrated a community organizing group called the Invaders. Now, the Invaders were not super friendly with King, but they were working together with him, and they were not non-violence. They were armed and so on, and they were helping King with the plans for the march and what was going on in Memphis and so on. So they had two rooms, as far as I know, at the Lorraine Motel. But they just half an hour before the shots rang out, somebody came, if it was the owner, I'm not sure, but somebody came and said, "I'm very sorry, we know you paid the room and so on, but you need to leave." They didn't understand why, but in the end, they left. So they were not there because they could also get involved with weapons and so on, starting firing at any sniper or something like that. So they needed to be taken out of the way as well. And it later turned out that this Merrill McCullough, who was the first there and who was checking for life signs, not only was he an infiltrator of the Invaders and an undercover cop, he was also paid by military intelligence. He was also working for the FBI and later for the CIA. And when this came out, I mean, most people thought, you must be joking. The CIA as well? And I think it was ABC that were told this thing, and they just couldn't believe it. So they called the CIA, I think in Langley, and just said, "Excuse me, but could you please connect me to, or have you got anyone called Merrill McCullough working for you?" And they said the guy with the switchboard had no idea who was calling. So he said, "Yeah, just let me check." And yeah, here he is, let me connect you. So he connects this TV reporter to, and it's all recorded, to Merrill McCullough. And they say, "Yeah, hi, excuse me, but are you the Merrill McCullough who was there when King was killed?" And he said, "Yes." And so are you working for the CIA? And he says, "Yes." "Since how long?" He says, 17 years. So here we are. The shots are fired by a shooter in the bushes with military snipers around, and the first guy who's there is paid by military intelligence, CIA and FBI, and an undercover cop. All of it. So I think he was there to make sure that King was dead. That was his task. And you will see also that the ones pointing are Jesse Jackson, you can't see his face, and then Andrew Young pointing toward. But these people were standing with their backs towards where the shots were fired when they were fired. So there's a lot of confusion. Who started pointing and why? Was that part of the script to point out the boarding room? And if so, is it possible that Jesse Jackson was involved in this as well? There's a strange detail with that photo as well. As there's a woman that looks like a cleaner, and she's got like a bag, a cart, where for washing, for sheets and towels and so on. But this was 6 o'clock in the evening, so there's no need. There would be no change of rooms at that time. So what is that doing there? And also, they put a towel on the face of Martin King. So I don't know why it was there. I don't know who she was. But I think you need to put a question mark why she was in such a central position, including that cart, whatever that was. Maybe there were weapons in it to finish him off. Maybe there were, I don't know. But I don't know. It's also very strange. On some of the photos, you will see there's another police officer that kneels down by the side of Martin King. And the size of his shoes are like 3 sizes too big. I'm just pointing this out. I have no idea why that is, but I tell you, this guy could not run in these shoes even if he tried. So it's a strange little detail. Anyway, so we have Jesse Jackson there as well. And please remember, if it's true that Jesse was the one that got Martin Luther King up on the second floor, then you also have to see that he's got a very central role to play here. And what Andrew Young says, what he did was that he bent down and dipped his hand in Martin Luther King's blood while King was still there. I don't think he touched the body, but the blood on the balcony, and then patted it on his pullover. So he smeared the blood on his clothes. And Andrew Young said, I've got an interview with him where he says, I don't know how you react in a situation like that, but I found it very strange. Anyway, this is a sweater that or a pullover that he is then wearing the whole time afterwards with the blood of King. And later he told the story that he held King when he died, which is absolutely not true. And also regarding Reverend Samuel Billy Kiles, who said that he spent the last hour with Abernathy and King in the room. Abernathy said that's absolutely lies. He was not there. And you can also see that the surveillance from the fire station says that Abernathy came around 10 to 6, knocked on the door, said it's time to go, and so on. So this whole story about us being pals and absolutely not true. And I would also, if you accept the fact that Jesse Jackson might have been part of the plot, please look at after the speech when Martin Luther King says, I've been to the mountaintop. He turns around and he walks back. He's given it all. And Jesse Jackson is there waiting for him. He does not look at him at all. He just more or less, he doesn't push him away, but sits down. And there's footage earlier the same day, where they arrive to the Lorraine Motel. Jesse Jackson gets out of the car. Look at his face. It is a very, very angry, brutal face on Jesse Jackson, not this sweet smile looking like Will Smith that we're used to. He looks very angry, and there's a very distinct look to his face. And if it's true that he, at that point, knew what was going to go down, that would explain the whole thing. And it's also said that he knew that that King was just about to pull his cover and expose him, and that he contacted the guys behind the plot and said, we need to act now, before it's too late. This would also say, if you look at, there's another famous photo where Jesse Jackson is standing next to Martin King on the balcony. There are 3 of them. I think it's Abernathy as well. And Jesse Jackson is smiling. Martin Luther King is not. His face is not smiling at all. And I would say that there is a possibility that that is a stage photo, you know, that was used then to follow up the whole thing after the assassination, that they were so close that they were, and this is why Jesse should take over. Because the people that killed King knew that somebody would take over that position. And so to control that person, to infiltrate and control the person that would take over would be totally in line with their plans. So when you look at that photo again with a smiling face, look at King's face, totally different. This is not like 2 friends standing there having a good time. And also, who took these photos? Is it this live photographer that was in the room afterwards taking photos, or who took these photos? I would very much like if anyone knows, because to be there exactly when this happened and in position and so on. If so, are there possibly photos before the shooting, during the shooting, and so on? How did he get up there at exact that time, and so on? So, but it seems like Dr. King did not die on the balcony, according to William Pepper and other sources. That now we get into some horrific stuff here, because when you plan and carry out these assassinations on that level, you need to cover all possibilities. You need all options covered so that the victim will not survive. This means also controlling the hospital, the ambulance, and the autopsy people, so that you can make sure that if there's any problem, the autopsy will show the official story, so that you can make sure that the guy will not leave the hospital alive. Just like Lady Diana, it took almost an hour for them to get her from the tunnel to the hospital where she died. Did they go to the hospital closest to the tunnel in Paris? No, they went to one further down the road, 6 kilometers away. And where it took, I believe, 43 minutes to arrive there. And witnesses have seen that the ambulance stopped some 500 meters from the entrance to the emergency ward, and that the ambulance was like rocking from side to side, where many researchers believe that they actually were sort of like pumping her body, because her wounds was not deadly to start with. She had internal bleedings, but not so that they could have saved her easily. But when she finally arrived to the hospital, it was too late. And who was at the hospital? Both people from the MI6 and the French intelligence agencies were there waiting for it. Coincidence? I think not. Anyway, so how to control the hospital? Well, the mafia godfather, the Dixie Mafia godfather, Russell Atkins, he had a family doctor. His name was George Breen Bland. And he was the chief of surgery at the St. Joseph's Hospital. Normally, when somebody was hit or had suffered from bullet wounds and so on, they were taken to, what was the name of it? It's a different hospital, not St. Joseph's. But he said in one of these meetings up to coming to this assassination, he said, just make sure that you bring him to my hospital, then I will sort it out. And just like it was planned, they took him to St. Joe's Hospital. It was a Catholic operated hospital at 220 Overtown Avenue. I don't think it exists anymore, but anyway. So, like I said, John Gaston's hospital was the one that normally took care of bullet wounds. But when he came there, the staff immediately tried to help him survive and so on. And there was a surgical nurse called Lula Mae Shelby who was part of helping him. They put a catheter in. They were trying to make him breathe. He still had a pulse. It was a steady pulse, but the wound was very, very serious. At that time, this chief of surgery, Dr. Greenbland, he comes in and says, sorry for the language, stop working on that nigger and let him die. That is exactly the wording of what this nurse said that he said. Stop working on that nigger and let him die. Then he pulled out the catheter and he ordered everyone out of the room. And when this nurse was about to leave the room, she heard how all three, he entered the room with two people in suits, unidentified, I don't know who they are. But these people were there alone with King. And when she was just about to leave the room, she heard how they spat on him while he was still alive. And then she saw how Dr. Greenbland took a pillow and put it across his face and held it there until he stopped breathing. And that, I believe, is how Martin Luther King died. Now, Dr. William Pepper, he has spoken to Cyril Vecht, which is a very world-famous pathologist, an expert that has been part of exposing the JFK assassination and many others. And he asked him about the severity of these wounds, and Dr. Becker said that most probably he would not have survived. But here again, they just wanted to make absolute sure that he was dead. And this is how it was done. Not a nice story, eh?
Right. This is, and there's so many ritualistic aspects to this. Going back to the original archetypal assassination of Julius Caesar, where all of the co-assassins had to plunge in the knife. All of these co-conspirators, I think, have to, like the co-conspirators who met reportedly several nights before the JFK had to all sign the documents and all agree to be part of this. There's here this doctor, again, part of this ritual. It seems that there are all these ritualistic aspects to it also. I'm just commenting on that as one more aspect of these things. There's also, sorry, go ahead.
I think this is also to make sure that nobody grasps on the other ones, that everybody is guilty.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, I don't want to interrupt for questions. So if you want to continue with your narrative, just tell me.
I just want to point out that this mysterious Raoul is identified according to William Pepper. I don't know his identity, but I do know that there are strong connections with the JFK assassination. For one of, according to a witness I'm in touch with, who used to live with a man called Charles Frederick Rogers, he was one of the handlers of James Earl Ray, why he was doing all of these things. And right. Charles Frederick Rogers is, when you look at the photo of the three famous tramps in Dealey Plaza, he is the one walking up front. He's the first. So it's him, then Charles Harrelson, Woody Harrelson's dad, and then Chauncey Holt, not E. Howard Hunt, which has been pointed out.
That's the first time I've heard of a Woody Harrelson connection to the JFK assassination.
It's his dad. His dad, Charles Harrelson. He was a convicted murderer. He died in prison later. He killed a judge in San Antonio, I think. But he was a hitman for Carlos Marcel.
Whoa. Perhaps that's even worth and Woody seems to have come out of this unscathed, or is he connected through that show business mafia?
I don't know, but I don't know, but if you look at how good he was in Natural Born Killers,
Oh yeah,
that is a scary movie, I think, because it shows the evil that can come forward in a person. I have no idea. I just know that it's his dad.
no, it's his dad.
But
Amazing.
also, this Raul is said to have, the photos where Lee Oswald is standing in New Orleans handing out leaflets. Raul is said to be one of the people in that photo. I don't know which one. Chauncey Holt, which is the old tramp, he's one of the other ones. I know he's on the right-hand side with sunglasses. So it's one of the other ones. And Beverly Oliver, who is one of the witnesses closest to the JFK limousine when the shots were fired, and Madeline Brown, who is the girlfriend of Lyndon Johnson, and also the mother of his illegitimate son. All of them, plus a woman called Cherry Angel, they all picked out Raul from a photo lineup as a man they saw together with Jack Ruby in his Carousel Club in Dallas. Do you see we're talking about the same players, players.
Right. This is extraordinary. And does this, just to step back now and to begin to try and piece all these pieces together. So is this really a continuation of what you identified as Operation 40 that started during the Nixon administration?
Yeah.
During the Eisenhower administration under Nixon, and then went on to assassinate JFK and then continued? Is that what it is?
Do you know Lyndon Johnson was talking about a murder incorporated, and this is what we see. There are different angles to it and different members, just like when, for instance, if you speak to Chip Tatum, who's a CIA whistleblower, he used to be the commander of an ultra-secret hit team called Pegasus under the direct control of George Bush Sr. in the 80s and up until the early 90s. And he said that the world of assassins, of good assassins, is very, very small. It's the same people being sent around globally, because it's not for anyone. This takes a certain kind of, I would say, psychopaths to be able to kill people like this with such cold blood and so on. And so he also said that Operation 40, that was just the name when it was created. Then it took different shapes and went into other groups. And every new project, every new task they were given was often under a new name, so that the group would change names as well. So it's just because I've been able to track down who were the members and then follow some of their careers. It's just mind-blowing, because they moved up to a very high level, many of them.
Well, now, what could you tell us more about Operation Pegasus?
Operation Pegasus, it was George Bush Sr. who was the paymaster, if you remember, of Operation 40, and who kept many of these people, at least some of them, very close to him during his whole career. One of them was Felix Rodriguez, who was very central later on in the Iran-Contra scandal, also together with Ole North. And Pegasus was the later version of one of these hit teams. I think, I don't know how many was in the team, I believe maybe 5 to 8 people, and where Chip was the commander. I also think he was the pilot flying them in and out. And he said he was part of taking at least 14 hits, as far as I know, in, I believe, Europe and the rest of the world, not in the US, because it was when George Bush Sr. wanted him to terminate Ross Perot that he just totally refused. And that was when he became a whistleblower, that when he stood up against these forces. And that he's still alive is just incredible.
And what's the whistleblower's name again?
Chip Tatum.
Chip Tatum. Now, I'm just trying to get clear about this because there's a bit of an overlap between that and research that we've been doing in the quantum access field involving George H.W. Bush, which was a CIA and DARPA operation called Project Pegasus that was active in the mid-60s and early 70s, that a colleague of mine was in, that I was targeted with, that was the secret teleportation and time travel project that my colleague Andy Bashago was a childhood participant in, that he came out as a whistleblower and said that he was present at a meeting in 1971 that George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush were present there in New Mexico, where the CIA briefed them that they had been pre-identified as future presidents. And that was Operation Pegasus. Now, Ross Perot is the fellow that came in and blocked George H.W. Bush from continuing as a future president in order to bring Clinton in. But Clinton had also been briefed by Project Pegasus as a future president. So the fact that George H.W. Bush asked Chip Tatum, that's kind of getting between interfactional warfare in the Bush-Clinton gang. It's like the Bush part of the Bush-Clinton gang, it's almost like I won't get into modern politics, but do you think, have you heard of the other, was that just that Operation Pegasus, was that just George W. Bush adopting that name that was separate from the Project Pegasus in the CIA and DARPA? Probably, I would guess. Anyway, it gets very weird, because what that means is that George W. Bush knew that he was president in '88, but when it came to '92, he hired Chip Tatum to try and knock out Ross Perot, because Ross Perot is the guy who made it possible for Bill Clinton, who was another part of Project Pegasus, who became president in '92 because of the time travel. Anyway, this is a different level, but of secret operations. But
yeah,
I just want to get those.
Clinton and George Bush Sr. were they are the people in the Iran-Contra scandal, where Governor Bill Clinton in Mena, Arkansas, let this airfield in Mena, Arkansas be used to transport in tons and tons of cocaine. Was personally received by Dan Lasseter and his colleague Bill Clinton, and sometimes George Bush Sr. And one of the pilots that flew these things in was Chip Tatum. And this is also, he collected a lot of evidence against these people. This is why he's still alive. He called it his insurance, all of this evidence that he collected against them.
Right. So this is wild and woolly in there. Now, I just like to jump now to the subject of Jesse Jackson, because this is big news, and I think that you in this interview have in a number of talking points. you have shown probable cause as to why Jesse Jackson and Reverend Kyle were probably paid operatives, part of the plot of the cabal that was brought together to assassinate Reverend King, but also a larger plot to install Jesse Jackson as the inheritor of the official sort of black leader by the.
No, sorry. I believe that he did like a psyop almost as well, because he stayed at the Lorraine Motel, and then when the ambulances, everybody left with Dr. King's, with his body and so on, going to the hospital, and he stayed so that he was left alone, or he made himself suddenly be alone with the whole press. So he was the one that was giving all the talks afterwards, that was, in the focus. And also the news stations afterwards often sort of like encircled King and Jesse Jackson, like almost like with a halo in the photos of these two together, pumping this whole thing up.
And so let's just go in this line of questioning to look at Jesse Jackson. This is from his official bio. Jesse Jackson Sr., born Jesse Louis Burns. That's his official name. He was a candidate for the, he's a candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination in 1984 and 1988, and served as a shadow U.S. Senator for the District of Columbia from 1991 to 1997. Former U.S. representative. Okay, and then he was a commentator with CNN from 1992 to the year 2000. So that's a fairly substantial individual who can run for president at a substantial level in those 2 years, 80, 84, and 88, who can be a senator from the District of Columbia for the 90s. So that means that he has the weight of the establishment behind him. So those were his 30 pieces of silver for this. And since he's from the Chicago area, when the other Manchurian candidate came up, Barack Obama, who appeared out of nowhere, and I say Manchurian candidate because you can go, if you Google Barack Obama Manchurian candidate, you'll come to a study that we did that over 80,000 people have seen, showing that Barack Obama similarly was a CIA teleguided legend. He's actually an Indonesian named Barry Soebarka. And Jesse Jackson attacked Barack Obama when he first came out as a leader and as president as not being authentically black. So apparently there's been a lot of friction between those two. I don't know what the source of that was. Maybe there were conflicting police, secret police, undercover rivalries. There are two gangs. One was the Bush-Clinton gang, and I think it is that Jesse Jackson belongs to the Bush-Clinton right-wing police gang, and Barry Soetoro Obama belongs to a different CIA cordon.
I think two arms of the same body.
Of the same thing. But could you talk about what the United States is like that we've had this amazing, I mean, we had in 1977, 78, because I was there, I, met with Representative Gonzalez called us in New York. We met in Washington. We devised all these plans. We met with the Black Caucus. We got got this legislation passed. President-elect Carter sent a representative to meet with me in the Carlisle Hotel in New York because he wanted to have a liaison with the House Select Committee. And I was part of the part of the Assassination Information Bureau, one of the co-directors. We had 8 co-directors. We're all equal. And President Carter wanted to be in, he was going to assume the presidency in January of 1977. And he wanted to be part of that investigation, and keep it honest. This was before it was infiltrated. So it was a big deal then. There was a lot of hope, at least for a few months, that it wouldn't be infiltrated. Could you, in your mind, just talk to us about, since you follow this, what happened to the House Select Committee on Assassinations and how the Americans have been hoodwinked and how this has been an utter failure of the press, the politicians, the Congress, the courts. They had a coup d'etat in the biggest nation in the world, and it's gone for 40 years now. And look what the United States has ended up with. It's ended up with an impossible presidential election between two, it's just impossible. So could you just give us the benefit of your research and wisdom and share with the audience who may not be aware of the scale of what's been going on in the United States these last 40 years of this cover-up by all politicians of all stripes, by even the Kennedy family, by everybody. Thank you. I'm sorry, I just had to get that out.
No, but I don't know what to say really, except I think it's incredible. I come from a little town out in the middle of nowhere. I have no background. I'm not hired by anyone. I'm not a journalist. I'm not anything. And I find out these secrets just because I'm determined. I'm part of a small group globally that are determined to expose these things. Whereas this should have been done like 40 years ago, 50 years ago by journalists that were doing their job. These are not impossible jigsaw puzzles to solve. It is just you need to do your job. But the game has been hijacked, it's rigged. And like when I said there was a coup d'etat in 1963, I mean that was a takeover, and we're still under that power. The power that killed Kennedy has killed so many people that have been standing up against them and taken over so many countries illegally and killed millions of people in innocent countries, killed thousands and thousands of American soldiers in totally unjust wars that are just built on extreme greed and madness and based on pedophilia and drugs. And I don't know what to say except that I don't even follow like Trump or Hillary because I haven't voted in my whole life, and I can't see the point of it. As far as I know, if the way I've been informed, the game is rigged this time, is that there will be total chaos, and out of this chaos, the Constitution will put aside, and Barack Obama will come for a third term. So I don't even think that Hillary, or Trump is going to be the new one. And whoever is going to be there as a front figure, it will just be another glossy cover of the same brutal death machine.
Wow.
I need to say, the US are talking about terror states or like Iran, like they're filled with terrorists, and Syria and Libya and North Korea and so on. We're being pumped with that these are dictators and these are horrible warmongers and so on. How many wars have Iran started? How many wars in the last couple of 100 years? 1, 0, I believe 0. How many have North Korea started? How many have Libya started? How many have Syria started? And then the question comes to the USA. How many? We are in the hundreds. How many military bases have the US got? Is it 1,500 around the globe? I think it's something like that.
Oh, is it that
How
many?
many have Denmark got? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's 150. I believe it's 1,500. But it's many. Let's make it clear.
Yeah.
It's many.
Well,
how many have Germany got? How many have Denmark got? Nothing. It is the war tool of the world is the US. It's just like Chip Tatum says, the terror tool of the world is the USA. The US Army. The US Army, sorry, not the USA. And the whole heart of that is in the Pentagon and in Washington. That is the center of death in this
in this culture. Well, one of your co-recipients of the Prague Peace Prize, Jim Mars, this year, has written about extensively that he believes that it's the Nazis that actually won World War II, that came over and took over the US, and that are actually using the US as a platform. And so it's the Fourth Reich that we're experiencing. And I believe that there's a lot of merit to that argument, that we're experiencing the Fourth Reich, and that these are all soldiers. They're Americans, but they're Cubans, and they're a lot of different nationalities, but they're actually members of the Fourth Reich, and sort of a Nazi ideology. But let's get back to Jesse Jackson, because he's a guy who's still out there under what some people call the false light, and it looks like he is the consummate traitor to his race, a national traitor who has brought about a tremendous amount of just harm to the human race, and that he's been nailed, as they say, probable cause. If there were any justice, any just district attorney, because there is no statute of limitations on murder. There is no statute of limitations on murder. There is none. And if there were any just, any honest district attorney in the United States, Jesse Jackson would find himself in front of a grand jury and up for murder charges, along with Reverend Kyle, along with a whole number of individuals who were involved in the 4 political assassinations that we managed to get the Congress to examine: the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, and Malcolm X. I mean, we won't even get to 9/11 and all those other false flags that we've brought to the US Congress. Let's just stick with this one. Let's just bring up Jesse Jackson, because I know that in Europe, your colleagues at the various conferences have been able in the truth movement to bring up the facts at some pretty amazing venues. You know, even when the Bilderbergers had their meetings, you were able to come up and show the truth, and then at the various conferences bring the truth out, and you're award winners now. And I think that maybe even in Dallas, and I know that, and I'm just putting this out there to the audience that is watching this, that you're now one of the speakers at the JFK assassination conference in Dealey Plaza, Dallas in November of 2016. This is just me talking. Now you've got that's the JFK, you know, and there are a lot of the murderers walking around free. However, Jesse Jackson is a major voice in the United States and one of the false leaders of this cabal that has been out there since the decade, you know, since the summer of 68, 63 to 68, that has led the United States and driven it into the ditch. This false leaders. So how about it? Do you want to get up there and as part of your talk, denounce and bring the facts to that conference and begin to bring the facts of Jesse Jackson? I think that man should be prosecuted, and that I think that the Black community should begin to join into this. What do you think? I mean, I think we should get a movement started on this. And in honor of Dr. King, Dr. King's nephew, we had to give him asylum here in Vancouver for 2 or 3 years because he had to flee the United States because the United States secret government wanted to assassinate him. And I've done programs that are still online. Anyway, back over to you. I don't know why, but this has really gotten me going. I know it's hard to, I just got to control myself. But no, I mean, the amount of treachery here is extraordinary. And Jesse Jackson has got to face something. I mean, I know people who were his senior advisors in his 2 presidential campaigns who he's hoodwinked. He's hoodwinked the United States. And the FBI, the CIA, all of these agencies that were part of the assassinations, the Secret Service, they've hoodwinked the United States for over 50 to 60 years. And it's time for the chickens to come home, as Malcolm X said. So tell us, as an objective observer from Sweden, what you think should be the medicine that should happen here.
First of all, I will say that he has not been sentenced for anything, but I truly believe that he has a lot of things to answer for. And William Pepper, Dr. William Pepper, has gathered a lot of information and facts and evidence against Jesse Jackson. The first time I heard William Pepper talk about this was in an interview with Gary Null. There was a press conference and live press conference with Gary Null, and where they went through these things, and where William Pepper as well was pointing out these things. He was the one also confirming that it was Jesse Jackson that got him up on the second floor on the balcony. And the other thing with him dipping the hands in Martin Luther King's blood, smearing it off his shirt, that's Andrew Young. I mean, a person that has absolutely no reason to say things like this if they were not true. And also he was walking around with this bloody shirt afterwards, giving the story that he was the last one that held King when he died, but he was not. You ask all the witnesses there. He never touched the body as far as I know. Also, Reverend Samuel Billy Kiles, he as I hope you can edit in this clip, where he makes this Freudian slip in front of a TV audience, where he says, and it was first when I walked to the side so that he could get a free shot, that the shot rang out. I mean, what does that tell you? He admits it without knowing. He's not aware of what he's saying, but his subconscious is telling the truth. And so by him knowing that the shots were going to be fired, taking a step to the side, that makes him so guilty of conspiracy to murder. And also the whole setup with the barbecue, the whole thing with Jesse Jackson with the ties and all of these things, this smells a long way. Then again, he's not sentenced, he's not been in trial where he's got a guilty sentence, but I sure as hell would like to hear these two people answer some questions and give some answers to what is going on. You know, and also look at these two people. Why wasn't it Ralph Abernathy that took over after King? It was not. And instead we had Jesse Jackson just boom, rise to stardom. And this is nothing new when you look in the history of the world. Traitors triumph and heroes hang. You know, this is the way of the world, unfortunately, in many cases. And when you look at such a beautiful human being as King was, and can you imagine what he would have accomplished had he been left to live? Him together with Robert Kennedy and JFK, if these three people, bring in Malcolm X as well, these four people, how would the world have looked like? What would it have looked like now? Very different to what we experience now, I think. So these are extremely serious accusations and very important ones as well.
Right. Now, getting back to Dallas, because you have functioned as a world spokesman now, going around and educating the public as to what's been happening, not only on this most recent, what we can call almost a false flag industry that has been happening in all major capitals of the world and at schools, you know, where they're just from public schools to capitals of the world, to Paris, etc., and deconstructing all these for us and helping us understand how they're constructed. And now coming back to the US and showing the US how the past 60 plus years, 70 years of its history have been constructed around these false flags. And so we're the organizers of the Dallas conference in November 2016, the JFK assassination conference, do not provide the airfare. They just provide hotels. So are you opening up a GoFundMe.com or how are you going to be doing that?
No, it's the person behind this conference is Judith Vary Baker, which is, I think, one of the world's most important witnesses to his world history. She was Lee Oswald's mistress, but she was also involved with the CIA creating a bioweapon, a cancer based on cancer, an SV40 virus that backfired and is part of creating this global epidemic of cancer in the world due to the fact that this virus was grown on monkey kidneys, and in the polio vaccines, these are a few years before the JFK assassination, but that was injected in several 100 million Americans and also Europeans were infected by live monkey viruses. And this has caused this global epidemic of cancer now. And so she is extremely important in her testimonial of how this whole thing happened, what was actually going on also around the JFK assassination, showing that Lee Oswald was not the assassin. On the other, instead, totally on the contrary, he was, I must say, a real hero who sacrificed his life to try and save JFK. He knew from the end of July 1963 that he was the patsy and that he was going to go down. And still he stayed and did everything he could to warn Kennedy. So I admire this man incredibly much. Such a young soul giving his life for something like this. Anyway, the airfare, this whole thing is arranged around Judith Berry Baker, who is not a wealthy person, who is also, she's living in Europe on a fake name, hiding, because she's been harassed and threatened, and they tried to kill her many times and so on. Beautiful woman that I call my friend. I'm really honored to know her. But the thing with this conference is that they have 25 incredible speakers. I mean, including Jim Morris and St. John Hunt, E. Howard Hunt's son, and Gary Powers Jr., and Abraham Bolden. I mean, so many of these incredible people. And the finances are very hard to get together. So what I've been given is somebody has donated the airplane tickets, so I'll get there. I have two nights in a hotel and a dinner. But I'm going to be there for a week, because this is number one on my bucket list, is to go to Dealey Plaza. I mean, I've studied that for so many thousands of hours. I know every meter of the whole place. So I want to go there and also document what I've been doing also for a series of documentary. So my whole problem is that the tickets are bought and through this donation, and I have no idea how to fund the rest, with hotel rooms and food and maybe rent a car so I can go to Oslo.
Yeah. A very easy way I would suggest is GoFundMe.com. It'll take just 10 minutes to set one up. And even by tomorrow, 24 hours after this program, if you send me the link, I can incorporate it into the article accompanying this program. And then viewers of this program can, if they wish, donate to you through that. And it's been very successful to many researchers in your position that I know of.
That would be fantastic. I'm doing this full time. I feel the situation the world is in now, we need full speed ahead, and so I've been devoted to it for years. And my website is lightonconspiracies.com, and on that there are donation buttons.
Good. So people can go to lightonconspiracies.com, and they can also make donations there. And that'll be for the week that you're in Dealey Plaza, documenting all of this and bringing it even to a higher level of specificity, so that Americans in the world, it's amazing that for 60, 70 years, America has been an occupied country, occupied by the Nazis, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there are many different theories, and life just goes on. I mean, it's just like, it's just stultifying. And everybody's under such mind control as, oh, yes, but. It's just,
But the thing is,
they don't have a nation state. They don't have a commonweal. They have just a nothing.
But when you look at it, sort of objectively, it is a country that has been hijacked by super criminals, drug dealers, mass murderers, and assassins.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
That's it. And that's
and
it.
then people are confused. Why doesn't things go better, and why are we still having this horrible situation? Well, that's one reason.
Play him some patriotic music and wave the American flag, and everybody's brainwashed.
Yeah, the thing is, I would say, they say, as a patriot, you cannot criticize your government. I would say it's the exact opposite. If your country has been hijacked, what would a patriot do? Do everything to get the country back.
Right.
And stand up against these. I mean, we're looking at cold-blooded murderers in a mass scale.
Yeah.
That is.
So, and my family on both sides goes back to the Mayflower on my mother's side, the early 1700s on my father's side. So we're, American settlers, and I've got Native American blood. So you have my permission to say this on this program. I'm an American, even though you're Swedish. So Americans, listen. This is American talking to you with informed opinion. Get it. You don't have a country anymore, and you haven't had it for 70 years. Okay.
I wish I could say that was not true, but I can only say, yep.
It's true.
That's about
true.
And I think it's weird that someone like me should tell it to you. Don't you think that's a bit strange?
Well, no, that's within the history of the U.S. The U.S. is a creature. It was set up in 1776. In 1776, the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence, was infiltrated at my alma mater, Yale University, by Skull and Bones, which was called the second chapter of the Illuminati. The Bavarian Illuminati was actually Skull and Bones at Yale. And their whole mission was to perverse and twist the American experiment, so that from the get-go, it was cosmic outlaws. The whole thing, and that's why you've had the Civil War was the world's first industrial war on an industrial scale, and it was all about the European bankers, the Rothschilds, and others pitting the North against the South. It had nothing to do with Americans. It's always been outsiders. It's been the voice of enlightened outsiders, and versus war, disease, crime, and poverty, and entrenched interests fighting it out. But a population that really has grown lazy and complacent, and that is totally brainwashed and hasn't figured it out, that they were taken over on November 22nd, 1963, and did not rebel, and still has too much faith in the media, which is owned by 6 companies, the Congress, which is owned by the big money, the Supreme Court, which is owned by the pedophilia networks, and the executive, which is owned by the Nazis. So, and that's all common knowledge all around the world. And, anyway, okay, I'm going to now be quiet, and I'm going to let you have the what do we learn from this? Because this is such astounding news. This is such astounding news that it's taken this long. I mean, this was 1968, and we're in 2016, and it's taken this long. So, tell us why it's taken this long, and what does it mean that this is coming out now?
Why it's taken so long is because most of us have been, I mean, I don't get it. I don't know, like how much evidence is needed when you look into these different cases, including 9/11 and Boston and Sandy Hook, and I don't know how much evidence is needed. If your child is sitting in the bathroom, black in the face, and you ask, have you used my makeup? And the child says no, sorry, the child is lying because it's got makeup and eyeliner, whatever, all over the face. But here, just because it's government or somebody in an official position, when they say, when we get them with their hands down in the cookie jar, and they say no, because there was someone else, and we believe them and believe them and believe them and believe them and believe them, even while we see that the whole storeroom is being emptied of cookies. This is such a bad example, but do you know what I'm saying? It's like these people are so guilty of so many things. If you park wrongly in the street, you will get a ticket, boom. They will tow away your car. You will get your ass burned because of one little mistake. These people get away literally with mass murder, and we don't see it. I mean, I don't get it. I so do not get it. And this is why I've devoted my life to sharing these type of things, trying to make it so, put it together in a way that it's not up for discussion. I present, and then it's up to whoever in the receiving end to see yes or no. But hopefully I present it in a way where people are sitting with their jaws in their knee, just like, what? And this is not just one case. There's so many. And it all comes back to the same power structure. In my opinion, as far as I know, the power structure behind the so-called New World Order with all the different layers. But it comes back to the same, and they do it the same way. If it's assassinations, I can tell you the whole template they're going to use. If it's like false flag operations, mass shootings, I can give you the template. If it's terror attacks, I can give you the template. And I presented it in hundreds and hundreds of interviews. And I must say, there is a massive difference now. When something happens, there's so many on the internet that are there totally checking everything out and totally picking it apart, debunking it right when it happens. Within hours, there are thousands of people, hundreds at least, that are there with a very, very sharp eye and sending me a lot of information. So even, I know also that we've stopped several planned massacres. So I think that is amazing as well. So I don't think I've answered your question with whatever that question was. What can we do with this? We can, for one thing, wake up and see, wait a second, something is smelling. Yes, it's the house, it's on fire. So what should we do? Should we discuss it, or should we turn around, see where the fire is, and turn the fire out? I would suggest that's a good, pretty good way of dealing with it, or evacuate the house, or not just sit there and pick your nose and change the channel and watch another episode of Idol or My Voice or whatever the names are. It's here and now, and these forces are moving forward because they know we're in the middle of waking up, so they need to move forward fast to shut us down, to push us into a very dark and controlled corner, where once they got us there, there's not really any way out. So now, while we still have the opportunity, very good idea to wakey and let the truth show the way. Just speak the truth as you see it and expose the truth where you see it. Make people responsible in power positions where they sign off your civil rights, your human rights, where they do all of these things without just hiding in the corridors of power. Make them accountable, you know. Each and every one, you have to be accountable for your action. Let them be accountable. Put names on it. It's like a woman, an African-American woman in the States said, I've helped her put a face on terror. She said, now I can see it. I felt it my whole life. Now I can see it. And this is why my website is called Light on Conspiracy. Put the light on them. They are like cockroaches. You aim the light at them. They cannot work. They cannot keep doing what they're doing because we see them. So I say, aim the spotlight right there. Boom. And make them accountable. It's very simple. And there's so much of the truth is out there. You don't have to go and look very far. And just let America and many other countries do what it says on the paper, in the Constitution and these papers, where it said contracts and so on, just follow the truth. Whatever you promise on the paper, follow it. And here, you're not supposed to lie in court. Okay, fair enough, then don't. And if somebody do it, then nail their ass, you know. And the same, how can you have like people in incredible positions like presidents and so on, be like the hearings after 9/11 without being under oath, in closed doors, with shut doors? What the hell? How can any one of us accept it? What is, when things like this happen, like in Nice, the so-called terror attack, absolute baloney, and so on. When a truck is said to have killed like 284 people and 202 victims, that's 286 people in total that has been hit by this truck, not a single drop of blood at all, loads and loads of things that does not match up at all. And then, since Nice in France, or Nice, if you want nice terror, that looks really good on the headlines, the Nice terror in Nice in France, it is the city in Europe with the most CCTV cameras anywhere. In France, 915 cameras. All of them shut down. Nothing shows anything. And then the day after, the authorities goes in and wants to confiscate and destroy any filmed footage. What does that tell you? I mean, how intelligent do you have to be to see that that is the behavior of criminals? This is when you do a drug hit, they try to flush down the drugs down the toilet. That shows that is a guilty bugger over there. He's trying to flush and get rid of evidence. Here, no, they're authorities, they're government, so nothing strange here. Where's all the footage from the Pentagon when the plane hit that? I mean, it's only the most secure building in the whole world with more cameras, I bet, than the whole of Sweden, Denmark, Norway together, and none of them shows anything. What does that tell you? Do you have to be very intelligent? Robert Kennedy, we're going to do an interview about Robert Kennedy. Okay, Sirhan was standing right in front of him when he pulled out a gun and started firing. That is undeniable. That he was under mind control and so on is another thing. He fires, it's a gun with 8 bullets. When you find out the sound, everything like that, it seems like somewhere around 12 or 13 shots were fired. What does that tell you? Possibly a second shooter. Well, at any point in time, Sirhan was right in front of Robert Kennedy, meaning, of course, so Robert Kennedy was hit all the time straight from the front. No, he was hit straight from the back and to the right, point blank. It even burned away some hair from his skull. And at no point was Sirhan that close or in that angle of Robert Kennedy. So I ask you, do you have to have an IQ of more than 10, which is an IQ that can tell the difference between hot and cold water, to figure out that there must have been a second shooter? Somebody must have been standing behind and to the right. Does that take a conspiracy theorist to figure out? Is that a theory? No, it's physics, it's facts. So this is what I'm saying. Wake up, Mike. I mean, please, if you want my brain not to have a total meltdown at times, then take these facts and look at them and say, he might have a point. Maybe somebody has been sitting, rotting away in jail since 1968. Sirhan is still in jail for something he did not do. Still in jail, not given a chance for appeal and so on. And he's just one of so many people that are rotting away for things they have not done, while the real criminals are the ones standing afterwards on press conferences and say, we must unite in the face of terror. We must stand up against and unite the nation. These are the criminals. These are the real murderers, not the poor people that often are not of a very high IQ that have to take the fall and cannot defend themselves because they're not even allowed to defend themselves or killed on sight. Case closed. Thank you, folks, and good night. It is wakey, wakey time. It is wakey, wakey time. Can I finish with a prayer?
Absolutely. In fact, you read my mind. So please.
This is my Roger teacher, Melanie Chellam's prayer, and I love it. It goes like this. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May everyone, and especially the ones who hurt us, be filled with peace and joy, love and light. Victory to that light. But it takes courage to expose the truth. Let the truth do its work. Look at, I tell you, there was this press conference I saw where Martin Luther King, this man that we today honor by exposing some of the very dirty details around his horrible death, where he was taken away from his families, his children. They were only small children that had their father brutally slaughtered. Awful. Anyway, this man, there was a press conference where it's down, I think in Birmingham or something like that, where I think there were 3 people, African-American, that had been killed by the local police force. Total murder. They were just killed, murdered, okay? And he stands at the press conference with the people who committed the murder right behind him, saying, this is what happened, this is the truth, we will follow. He stood up right in front of the lynch mob and spoke the truth. I mean, my God, the bravery of such a soul, it is unreal. And this is why such a beautiful soul needs to be honored by at least exposing what happened there. And then by exposing that, show also all connect the dots up until today. And let's save this beautiful planet that we've been given, that is totally messed up by a very small little group of people. It's like a cancer growth that is killing this beautiful body. And this cancer growth needs to be exposed, even though it's painful and might smell badly and so on. We need to find the metastases in this beautiful body, see if they're malignant or not, and then sometimes cut it open and take it away so that the body can heal. It is, otherwise, the mentality behind the New World Order and the mentality behind a cancer cell, I think it's very similar, because the cancer cell will go, yay, the second it's succeeded. And the biggest success for a cancer cell is when the carrier of the virus dies. What kind of weird logic is that? And here they're doing everything they can to destroy our seas, destroy our air, destroy our land, and destroy our plants, destroy our races, destroy our countries, destroy our nature. I mean, where will it end? They want to destroy so that we can't reproduce. They want to kill our children with vaccines. They destroy our air with chemtrails. They destroy everything, radioactive seas. And we're just saying, well, I guess it's normal. It's not. And it's not normal to accept these things either. So in the name of a beautiful soul like Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi, these two fantastic souls that showed the rest of us that it is possible to do this in a non-violent way. This is what I so admire with these two people. These two are people that are my heroes. If I got anyone, these are the ones. Because look at Mahatma Gandhi. He had no title, no army, no money. He had a stick that he used to walk with, and then he had a pair of diapers on, it looks like almost, and a blanket over his shoulder. That's it. He was a small, tiny guy. He didn't even have teeth in the end. And still, he united India of all chaotic countries. He united India and threw out the British Empire without a single shot fired from his side. How is that possible? Incredible, but possible. He showed that it is possible. And what was the price he had to pay? They killed him. So what else is new? And this is so weird. Like in my position, being a Mr. Nobody, I'm just as anyone on the street that have just devoted my life to truth, which makes me maybe not so normal anyway. But by talking about these things, who should I fear? Like when you look at TV or something, you should fear criminals, you should fear serial killers, you should fear these type of things. I fear people in political positions. I fear people, when I come to an airport, the passport control, the guards, I fear the police that are there to protect us. These are the enemies of someone like me. It's so upside down. I've been warned, if I come to the US, I will be given one of these orange overalls and maybe sent to Cuba for a nice long holiday. How weird is that? I'm only standing up for the truth. And then this is part of the game. And it's just bizarre, I think. Not that it would stop me. If an orange overall was it take, then that will be it. But I hope not. And I also want to say that if I do not come to the conference in Dallas, it is because something like this has happened. If I should suddenly not, I'm just saying.
Yeah, saying. Well, look, I just like to say, as an international lawyer, I still am, and war crimes judge. You are a researcher and an author, a recognized authority on these issues, and you are protected under international norms and standards, starting with the Declaration of Human Rights, with many, many international norms, and your speech and your writings are protected. So there are no laws that you have violated. There are no ways that you could be in any way. There's no justification for any sort of disruption of your lawful trip to come to Dallas and present your scholarly findings and do your further research there. So there you have it.
I prefer saying these things now just to
I understand. And I'm just declaring these things for the record also.
That's fantastic.
Right? Right. So
no, because my family is fearful of me going and so on, and that is so strange that there should be any reason to even fear, but there is, and anyway.
Yeah. Well, as they say, take all precautions. The United States is in many ways it's left. It's become a rogue nation, so you have to take that into account as well.
Yeah, I don't know how to protect myself except for being totally open and open and
I understand. So
and I also know that I'm going to be welcomed by beautiful people in
great. Great. So you're going to have a great welcoming committee there. There'll be lots of international scholars. There'll be a beautiful audience there. I mean, I don't think that I don't think that fear. I think fear has struck out at this point.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll find out. Yeah. Look, I want to thank you for your lifelong work and dedication, and really second what the Prague Peace Prize has done. And I want to thank you in particular for coming forward on the Martin Luther King assassination, especially this new information regarding the true extent of the plot, which involves a lot of courage on your part, because you are really deconstructing sacred cows that have been put in place by the same unlawful authorities that planned the assassination and that have led America astray for the past 50 or 60 years. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you for taking time out to join us today. And we look forward in the very near future, you're joining us again to proceed with learning more about the political assassination and the false flag of the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy.
I just want to say once again, so much of this should be credited to William Pepper. He is the one who spent 39 years. Without him, I don't know where we would have been. So the credit is his.
Yes. I recall meeting William Pepper at the 9/11 conference in New York City a number of years ago, and he's quite the scholar and instrument of justice. So I fully agree. Well, thank you, Ole.
My absolute pleasure, Alfred.
Until soon.
Until soon. Hasta lasagna.